Welcome to the Riff. Today, Jeremy sits down with Farmer Dan Bigbee. They talk about Dan's story as a longtime North Pointer and how farming and faith interact. After this episode, we hope that you're able to grow the tastiest watermelons around. Now, on second thought, just go buy one from Farmer Dan. Thanks for listening.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Riff. I'm excited for two reasons. Number one, I'm wearing a Mariners apparel because this is the first time since 2001 they made the postseason. Now, we're recording this with 7 games left. I'm assuming by the time this airs, this doesn't have to be edited out. But since Ichiro and Alex Rodriguez, and I would go to those games, this is the first time, longest streak of any major sport team to go without playoffs. So, yeah, just celebrating today. Second reason I'm excited is because I've got one of my friends, a longtime North Pointer. We're going to get into that, but someone, even if you don't have North Point connection, but you have connection to KY3, you might recognize Farmer Dan Bigbee here. So, Dan.
Yeah, thank you for having me this morning, Jeremy.
Glad
to come and visit with you.
Welcome to the Riff. First time.
Yeah.
But you've listened to a couple riffs, maybe?
Yes,
Okay.
have.
Good. Well, I am excited to have you here. We have you. This is like we're right in the middle of fall season right now as we're recording this. The beard is starting to grow. I always know that spring is coming when I see your cheeks because it's kind of like the groundhog.
6 months on, 6 months off.
Okay, so explain that because you're kind of a local celebrity here. You are a face made for TV, and a beard shouldn't hide that. Tell us a little bit about the Garden Spot, partnered by KY3. We're not sponsored by KY3 yet,
but we could be.
Yeah, maybe we will be after this show. Tell us a little bit about the Garden Spot.
So we do a once a week on Wednesdays, about a 3-minute situation. Steve Grant comes out, and we did it live. They started going to an hour's worth of news, and so now it is recorded. But back in the early days, that 3 minutes live could be pretty exciting because you are definitely live and there's no editing. But it's been a real blessing for the farm. Great advertisement for us. Steve and I have become good friends. We kind of got connected by mishap or misfortune. The KY3 gardener before me was the manager at the farmer's market, great fella, and he had a physical injury to his eye and then fell into a little bit of depression, and so was unable to fill the Garden Spot. And I can remember Steve coming and asking me, and I thought, that sounds crazy. I don't think I can do that. And some little voice in the back of my head said, maybe you better just try that. And boy, it has been a wonderful blessing for us. It has opened doors that never would have been opened otherwise. And Steve and I have a lot of fun. We reach a lot of people. And the nice thing about Steve is he pretty much lets me go where I want to go and gives me free rein, and that's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I don't know that there would be any luck trying to control you, trying to rein you in anyway. But so you run Fast Night Farms.
Fast Night Farms is a 15-acre plot of land in the middle of Springfield. People will ask me, well, which side of town is your farm on? Where, how far out is it? And I said, well, it's about 3 minutes away from Bass Pro Shop. And so the farm was there. Town grew up around it. It is divided by Fast Night Creek, so about half of it is not developable.
Able to be developed. That's what I always go to.
Developable. There you go.
Yeah.
But it has been in garden for over 100 years. I'm the third owner, and
wow.
It really has been a neat progression of how it's come along, and the story of how I was able to obtain it is I think it's God's providence. I had numerous opportunities to do other things that I thought were definitely money makers or things that should happen, and my father would sternly guide me into a different. He said, that's not the opportunity you want. One in particular, where I begged him to have his help and involvement. I would run down the list of everything every reason why it was correct and right and a moneymaker and a great opportunity. He just shook his head and said, well, it may be all those things, but he said, I don't like the company that you would be keeping. And you know what? In less than a year's time, that opportunity turned into a disaster.
Wow.
When it came time for the farm, he thought about it one night and gave me the down payment, which is a huge help. That was back in '86 when interest rate was 14 and 15 and 16%.
You just gave us some perspective right there.
Well, and that's if you had good credit.
Oh.
I was young and green, had no credit. And the gentleman who owned the farm wanted to live there and not look out his back window and see houses built on the land that he had farmed for 25 years. Wow. So he owner financed it for 5%.
Oh, wow.
So I do believe it was God's provision that allowed me to be there. And so that's why I like using the farm as sanctuary for people, a vehicle where people can come out and enjoy God's creation and maybe connect and get a little closer through nature with God.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to pull the string and take us way back to the beginning of your life, and then I'm going to have you just kind of walk through this journey. And I want to talk about faith and how North Point came into play. But let's start. You're born and raised in Springfield, Missouri.
So I was raised just basically a few blocks on the other side of Kansas Expressway. I'm kind of in the middle between the Dream Center and the North Point Norton location.
Okay.
And so I'm true blue, northwest side, been here all my life. My granddad came in from Willard, and the house that I live in, he moved into it in 1932 and went to work for the Frisco Railroad as a carpenter.
Okay.
And so, here in 10 years, we'll be on Hoffman Street for 100 years as the Bigbee family. That's kind of hard to believe, isn't it?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was Ed V. Williams, went to Reed Junior High School right down the road from us here, Hillcrest graduate, went on to MSU, but I've been in Northwest Springfield all my life.
A proud Hornet here from Hillcrest.
Indeed. Got two girls there right now.
Wow. Now, early when I don't know, one of the first few years I was in town, you gave me just kind of a ride around your homeland, right? And just kind of give me perspective, of North Springfield. So you actually live in that house now. You ended up.
That is correct.
And so you've been in that neighborhood your whole life.
So when Granddad bought the place, there were several vacant lots. They were all carpenters, my father, my uncle, my granddad. And he gave my father one of the lots, built a house there. And then in 1964, when my baby sister was born, the mom and dad built a house right next to that. And so I was born in the one house, raised all my teenage years in the other house, and my 97-year-old mother still lives in that house that Dad built her in 1964. So we're well rooted on the north side.
That's great. And so, okay, so you grew up, faith a big part of your life?
Yes, absolutely. Mom and Dad were always faithful. We went to High Street.
That was probably back when it was on High Street. Hence
Correct.
The name? Okay.
Correct. And so 16, 17, 18 years old, church kind of loses its luster. And also you begin to be real aware of some of the hypocrisies that you see, the things that people, they say, but then their conduct doesn't match what they say. And to me, that's one of the biggest, church can be its biggest enemy. It can be its biggest help. But boy, when people say one thing and do another thing, it causes a lot of people to not want to have anything to do with it. So,
Right.
Yeah. So about the time I was 18, I basically had no need for church. Life was good. I was off and running. And
were you already farming? Your dad a farmer?
No, he was a carpenter. But
okay.
I was in college working on a horticulture degree. The standard joke at my house is, I think Laura asked when she was about 9 or 10, Daddy, did you go to college? Yeah. How long? Oh, about 6.5 years for a 4-year degree. Mom, did you go to college? Yeah. How long? 4 years. Oh, Daddy, you're way smarter than Mom. And, of course, mine was about a 2.1 GPA, and hers was about a 3.9.
You squeezed it into 6.5. That works.
I did.
Horticulture degree, though.
Horticulture degree.
So that's an official green thumb.
Sort of, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. I was working at Wickman's, which is a landscape place right across from the farm.
Yeah.
And that's how I found out about Mr. Phipps, and he was kind to me, and I came over and was checking it out.
He was running Fast Night at the time?
He was the owner then,
okay.
Yes. And he basically, his health declined where he had to sell it, and I was in the right spot at the right time. But the problem with that is I was 28, I was college educated, I'd grown up gardening all my life. I mean, I'd been going to the farmer's market since I was 18, thought I knew everything about everything. But the problem there was I didn't know how to make a living at it. I mean, so for about 2 years, I really, really struggled and wouldn't take any advice from Mr. Phipps. And he'd come down and he'd see me getting ready to do something really stupid. And well, I believe if I was doing that, I'd try this or that. And I never was rude to him, but I can remember thinking, why don't you just go on up to your house and leave me alone? I got this. And after about 2 years, I realized I didn't have it, and I started listening to Mr. Phipps, and things turned around, and it was such a blessing to have him living just right there on the property. And he became like a second father to me. He was a great fella, and he watched after. All he wanted to do was to see me succeed and not make the mistakes that he had made before.
Wow.
So it was, all these things lead together to make me believe that God was watching out for this whole thing from day one, and so that's why I want to use it to bless other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, okay, so when you had about 18-ish, church became less of a priority for you.
Correct. Fun became more of a priority.
And were you probably pretty good at it?
I was pretty good at it. Was in a fraternity there at SMS. And so, it just didn't seem to be relevant to me.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, got married, thought everything was fine. And then my first wife and I started having problems. And ended up a long separation. And I remember, just praying night and day, God, restore this marriage. God, come on, this is what I want. And didn't go that way. And I remember having the choice to, well, now what are you going to do? You ask God and he didn't come through. Are you going to just completely go away from the faith? Or are you going to go dive headlong into it? And nothing like adversity to make you lean on God and search for God and make God real to you. And so that began probably my true faith journey right there.
Really?
Leaning back into God right there, hard as I could go.
So there's undoubtedly there's some people who are listening to this who right now are probably facing the biggest challenge and perhaps biggest disappointment they've ever had with God right now.
Yeah.
For you, that was the time you decided to lock in.
Yeah, you got a 50-50 shot there. And you know what? It's not easy. It's tough. Saying, okay, now every plan I've made, every situation I thought would be this way has turned upside down. But God makes something out of the mess that I've created. And he's faithful to do that. He will stand beside you. He'll come alongside you. And so, for people who are in a situation where they see no light, they see no hope, they can't even breathe. I mean, I went probably 2 years while we were separated. Every waking minute, that was on my mind. And I can remember the first day that I just kind of went, wow, it's been 2 hours And I haven't thought about that situation. I thought, there's hope on the other side of this, because it's not completely consuming me anymore. And that was huge. And so for people, if you're in that kind of high pressure situation, cling to God, lean into God. There's a passage that says, don't lean on your own understanding. Trust in God, acknowledge Him, and He'll set your path, and He will. And He'll put you on a path better than you ever dreamed you could be on.
So you fundamentally believe something beautiful could grow out of something dirty?
Beauty from ashes, you bet.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so you have this moment in your life where you're saying, okay, which is interesting because the Dan, I've only known you for the last 10 years. And you've always been this voice that comes from years of stability and wisdom. But it's interesting to me that there was a season of your life where you could have gone the other way.
Absolutely.
And why I'm encouraged as I think about that is there are people here right now. If you make the right choice today and surrender to God, there will be a slew of people who only know you as that faithful, consistent, God-honoring, life-giving person. And
that's beautiful. Yeah.
So along this journey, tell us the time. I think you got a flyer or you heard about this new church coming to your land, the Northland of Springfield, this place called North Point. Talk to me about that.
It was actually after the church had started, but Tommy Sparger was good about sending out different kinds of mailers to gin up interest. And so across from my mother, they were probably late 80s or early 90s at the time. Her neighbor Lucille got a postcard, and it had a picture, I think, of a roulette wheel on it or something like that. And she called Mother up, have you got this card in the mail? At North Point, if they're not careful, they're going to start attracting the wrong crowd over there. So
time out. I love that. Yeah. That right there, that could be the slogan. If you're not careful, you're going to start attracting the wrong crowd. Which is exactly the crowd we're trying to attract.
What we want to do.
That's awesome. From the very beginning, that was North Point's DNA.
You bet. Find the folks that are disenfranchised. Find the folks that are afraid to step in a church because they think it's all suit and ties and it's a club mentality. And that's what I love about North Point. I can bring anybody to North Point, and if I can get them past the front door, they feel comfortable. It is a safe place to find and follow Jesus, and that's the beautiful thing about it is. And the hard thing about it, too, is because church has done a lot of damage by doing church a way that is not user-friendly to a certain type of people.
Right.
They don't feel comfortable there. They know they're out of place. They know they don't fit in, but not at North Point. Yeah. Everybody fits in at North Point.
Now, do you remember your first time at North Point? Was that up at the old Five Guys place?
Absolutely. You bet. We were there day one, and we had gone to Hope Community over on the east side, and there was kind of I wouldn't call it a split, but a disruption. Yeah. And we were looking
We call them church plants now.
Right. And it was kind of. But we thought, this is crazy. They're having church in a theater. And, it was a theater before it was Five Guys.
That's right.
So thought we'd check it out, and man, from day one, it was full and it was energetic, and Tommy was a great speaker, and I just remember it very fondly. Working with the kids and chasing all the toys and balls as they rolled down the theater to the front towards the screen, and it's amazing how you can make something function even if it's not designed for it.
Yeah. Wow. And so you've been coming to North Point ever since North Point existed?
Sure. So even the building that we're in on Norton Street, I can remember Terry Ward and I think maybe Craig Sloan, we were out there with our tractors mowing it, getting ready to set up a tent and have the first kind of meeting before we built out there. And it's just an amazing story how God saved that property. Basically, I think the previous owner had turned down some offers, and he was just waiting for an offer from God, and that's exactly what he got with North Point. And so it is an amazing thing to see how it's progressed. My vision was limited because I just see Northwest Springfield, but I'm so glad, Jeremy, that you look at Nixa and Republic and the Dream Center and don't just get confined to a small space, because everybody needs God. And you are doing a great service to reach out of Northwest Springfield, because people are needy. They're hungry. It's harvest season.
Yeah.
It's time.
I love that. Well, as a pastor here, I'm so appreciative of your investment, of your ability to be there for people, encourage people. And I know that one of the ways that you do that, I've been in a men's prayer group with you. It's Tuesday morning, 6:30 on the north side.
Yes.
Come in the back entrance.
Come ahead. We're looking for you.
But it's we've been doing it for years, and you did it for years before I was even there. And it just means a lot to be able to pray together. What just really quickly about those prayer cards? We pray over the cards that people submit every week. Why is that an important thing to you?
Oh, it's huge. There's several reasons, and I want to go back a little bit. Craig Sloan has been so faithful to keep that rolling, and there were times when, it was just Craig and me and Bob, and if 2 or 3 are gathered together in Jesus' name, he's going to be there. Yeah. And I would encourage all men of any campus, if you want to come on Tuesday morning and sit down with your pastor, it is a strong way to start the morning, and several different reasons that people are so needy, and we need to lift them up in prayer. And prayer does wonderful things, but from a selfish reason, you can go in there and think that you are in a tight spot or trouble, and you got 6 or 7, 8 men that are right there going to pray for you, and they know you. I mean, if you pray with a man, eat with a man, work with a man, pretty soon you're going to know that fella inside and out. And so it is a huge way to start the morning, and it just is very uplifting. Sometimes it's a little heavy because people you have to understand that when you're sitting there on Sunday morning and, nobody shows it, but there are some pretty heavy needs of the people around you, and you need to recognize that. And, last Sunday, it was so moving to see that gentleman that, he was ready to go. He was ready to commit.
Yeah, the video, life change story.
Absolutely.
We did. Yeah.
And one kind word spoken in love.
Yeah.
Changed his trajectory.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to get community on any level, whether it's the men's prayer meeting or Wednesday setting up the church or just whatever.
Right.
Find somebody that you can connect with and lean on. Yeah. Because I know online church is good, and I'm glad people do that, but it's nothing like forming relationships and bonds and being able to look somebody in the eye and say, will you pray for me? Will you come alongside me? Will you help me? And so I would encourage people to find that spot for sure.
So if you're sitting there, you ever wonder, man, when I send in a prayer request online or if I fill out that card, do real humans look at those? And we carry those.
So
we carry those.
I want to... My good friend Matt Morris, he's
mine too. Just saying it.
Yeah, that's true. I'll share him. But his father, Mike, retired from Kansas, pastor, and came over here, and we became really good friends. Mike was an awesome person. Yeah, and he suffered through 2 bouts of cancer in between. Watched him lose his wife, Virginia, and. I guarantee you, when his son, Matt, gets a card that has someone requesting prayer for cancer, he looks at it in a totally different fashion. Yeah. Yeah. So you got real people who've been through real hurts. So many times I'll find myself aligning myself with the cards. This one's praying for a son. This one's praying for a daughter. And just after I get done praying for that son, I pray for my son.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all in this together, and we're all subject to the world's hurts and bruises.
Yeah.
And so that's why it is so important to lift people up in
But
prayer.
bear each other's burdens.
Absolutely.
So fulfill the law of Christ. Now, today, when I pulled into the studio, I saw the Mike Mobile.
Absolutely.
Mike Morris gifted this vehicle to continue to be a blessing. And whether it's hauling, I don't know, you haul watermelon through that thing.
So Mike made several trips to Arkansas for me before he passed to pick up blueberries and blackberries.
Yeah.
And his boys came to me at the funeral and said the van is old, said it's got a lot of miles, but it's still strong and sturdy, and we know that Dad would have wanted you to have it. And they just gave it to me. And so I try to find creative ways to use it to further God's kingdom.
Well, when I see it, it's just it's a cool memory of
bet it is.
The man. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about farming, and we share that background. Because I've been to one, you own one, that kind of thing. So what are some principles, as someone who's done this forever, what are some spiritual principles you see that play out in farming?
That you have to trust in God for your existence, because if you trust on yourself, it will never work out. I tell you, this season has put several more gray hairs in my beard. I mean, it's been super difficult. We had a stretch 53 days with no rain. Then we had a couple nice rains, and then we had a 6-inch rain in about an hour and 45 minutes. And because I'm down along the creek, both sides went under, did a lot of damage, washed in a lot of trash. And so the thing about farming is you get a new chance every season, but boy, you have to rely on God as your provider. And, there's a passage in Matthew 6, and it talks about how, God cares for the birds of the air, and, he clothes the lilies in glory, and how much better does he care for you? But, he said, the pagans, they run after all these things, but your Father in heaven knows what you need. And if you'll seek his kingdom and his righteousness first, then all that other stuff will come forward. And I've learned to not get ahead of myself as far as what my schedule is and what I need to plant and how you have to be diligent. You have to, the only set rule in farming is you plant nothing, you get nothing. But after that, it's just all speculation. But that being said, you still have to sow the seed. You still have to be faithful. You have to get in there and be diligent, and then God works things out. I mean, he's never left me hungry. He's never left me stranded. I have stopped stressing over when my plan doesn't work the way I think it should, because I guarantee you the Father has always got something better waiting for you. If he diverts you from one thing, be sensitive to the fact that you didn't need to go there. I mean, he's saving you from something, I guarantee it.
So one thing I don't understand about farmers, you would spend money on seed, and you're going to take that money and then you're going to bury it.
It's a gamble.
Why would you put good seed and put it in the ground?
Well, you put good seed in the ground because you're expecting a 10, 30, 100-fold return. And that is a great principle that, you have to apply yourself. You have to put your treasure somewhere where you think it's going to multiply, where it's going to return. And it is a chance. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want, but almost always there's one or two crops, one or two things every season that will sustain you. And so this year it's the fall stuff. It's going to be really strong. And, I was worried about, just like yesterday, I had a truck failure. I have an old truck, and I was headed out of town, and it had my schedule all lined out exactly how it was going to go. And I had talked on my pre-recorded KY3 about mums and different kinds of flowers, and I'd sold almost completely out. And that's hitting the air today, and I have no flowers, and I'm headed out of town, and my truck goes down. It's leaking diesel. So I happened to be close to my mechanic. I took it to him, and I thought, well, the sale is late, produce auction. I'll just get in the van and run on down there. And Hardy mums were as cheap as I've ever seen them this whole season, bought enough to make 2 loads. And so stop worrying about it. God's got it. He knows what you need.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna. I want to land by just kind of highlighting. Maybe some people out here have never been to Fast Night Farms. Again, it's just north on Campbell from Sunshine. Is that correct? Not Campbell.
It's actually
just west.
Just west of Campbell.
Okay.
Where Bass Pro Shop is. If you'll turn and go back to the west on Sunshine Street, I'm the second stoplight fort, like an army fort.
Okay.
Been there for years.
Yep.
Come visit us.
And I mean, it's a great place, especially in the fall. I think this will be, probably mid-October when this lands, but it's a great place to just enjoy fall.
So that's it. So about, I don't know, been several years ago, my wife Kelly encouraged me to plant a butterfly garden, and I was extremely resistant because I couldn't see the economic return in it, Went ahead and did it, and we have flowers all over. We got zinnias, we got sunflowers, we've got the creek is beautiful, and with all the pumpkins and everything. But back to the butterfly garden, it's filled with pollinators, bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, things like that. And one particular day, I had a very rough day. Pulled the truck within about 15 feet of the butterfly garden. And I just took a deep breath and walked down there to the butterfly garden and just watched God's creation for about 10, 15 minutes. It pulled me in, and I just stayed and stayed and stayed. After about 15 minutes, I couldn't remember really why I was so upset. And if you think about that, put a price on that. What's that worth? 15 minutes and you're back fresh and new, and you got your head cleared and ready to go. So get out in God's creation. Come stroll around the farm. You don't have to buy anything. Just come look at his beauty and reflect on God, and it'll be like medicine to you.
Lots of stuff to probably buy, to decorate, to use, to eat, but just a fresh perspective. That's free.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
God's perspective is always free.
Dan, I love you. You're a great friend. You are a blessing to my life, my wife's life, and to North Point Church for sure. Anybody who connects with you. And if you're at the Springfield campus, I'm trying to figure out how I can point him out. Like, he'll have a beard. He may have some overalls on.
Be on the back row.
Be on the back row. He's my back row brigade there. And he'll be slurping some coffee as he's praying for everybody around.
Absolutely.
And say hi to Dan and swing by the farm. But Dan, thanks for what you're doing. What you're doing, you've been planting and planting and planting. It says in Scripture, we will reap a harvest if we faint not.
That's right.
Stay
with it.
Stay with it. If we don't plant anything, we don't get nothing.
That's right.
So, all right. Thanks, Dan.
Jeremy.
And we'll catch you after the World Series when the Mariners probably have won that World Series.
Cardinals.
But thanks.
Cardinals?
No. Well, maybe. Go Pujols. All right. We'll see you later. Thanks for joining us on the Riff.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.